Are the Green Bay Packers and Jordan Love being disrespected coming into 2025? Brian Peacock and Matt Williamson think so. The dynamic duo, Peacock and Williamson, on a Friday. Locked on Packers. Let's go.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you'll find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened, they want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. It is always fun when I get together with Brian Peacock from Locked On 49ers and Peacock and Williamson and Matt Williamson, former NFL scout, to talk about where this Packers team stands right now and the perception of this team. That's the fun part. And the good news is, Brian and I normally a little bit more adversarial when it comes to the evaluation of the Packers when they're playing the 49ers. I wonder why. But he's on board this time. We'll talk to him and Matt. Let's do it right now.
I know how you feel about Jordan Love, and I feel like, we did fantasy quarterback rankings yesterday, and look, fantasy and real football is different as far as value goes. But I think Jordan Love was, what was he, Matt? 18 overall?
He was really low. That was Pro Football Focus's list. He was low.
4th out of 4 NFC North quarterbacks. So, and I hate to break it to you, Peter, but it's been a good run basically your entire life. Sorry, man. The Bears found a quarterback and a head coach, so it's all over now.
Yeah, it's been all over, according to Chicago Bears fans, for about 30 years, and they haven't been relevant since 1985. So I don't know what to tell them at this point, but maybe someday. But today's not that day.
Oh, it's coming. Not only Caleb Williams, but J.J. McCarthy was top 10. He was #1 of all the NFC North quarterbacks. We hadn't even seen him play a regular season game yet.
Well, we always over-index rookies in fantasy. That's just like time immemorial says that we do that. I don't know why it would be a quarterback like J.J. McCarthy who didn't even throw that much at Michigan. I know that the expectation is he's going to throw a bunch in Minnesota because they threw a bunch last year with Sam Darnold. But like, this is a guy who's a never-ever in the NFL, never played an NFL snap, and he's just going to walk into the league and be Jaden Daniels last year, be Justin Herbert a couple of years ago, even though no one thought, what was he, QB4 in his own draft? Like, come on. Like, this is... I believe in Kevin O'Connell. He's a really good coach. It is very annoying to me personally that Luke Braun gets to cover that guy. And Justin Jefferson and all the weaponry that they have. But come on, you still need to be the trigger man. You still need to have someone who can get these players the ball. And I don't know why you would believe in J.J. McCarthy. By the way, the Packers had a better offense than the Vikings last year with Sam Darnold. So is J.J. McCarthy going to immediately be better than Sam Darnold? Give me a break.
QB5, by the way, was J.J. McCarthy in the draft, was he not?
Okay, so
and hey, but so the first question is then talk to me about Jordan Love, because is he QB1 in the division, and is he being disrespected? I feel like he's being disrespected because nobody really talks about the guy. He's been in the league for 5 years. I barely wouldn't recognize him if I pass him across, if he's walking past him on the street.
Well,
real quick, Peter, I know you're aware of this, but I really think. You mentioned like pass attempts. When it was all said and done, Green Bay was one of the run heaviest teams in the league.
Yeah.
But I think so much of that is when Willis took over because of injury, they didn't pass the ball at all those games. And then when Love got back on the field, he just wasn't the same.
Yeah, he was hurt. And I think we have to remember that part of it. Like he tears his, has a knee ligament issue. We don't know exactly what happened, but a knee ligament issue on the ice rink that they played on in Brazil. And that caused him to miss 2 games. He comes back against Minnesota. He's not the same, but starts to get healthier. But then, we talked to his personal physio guy on our show on Locked On Packers, and he was like, yeah, I'm not surprised Jordan Love had a groin injury against the Jaguars, because you stabilize, you compensate. And so that puts strain on other parts of your body. Then he has that injury. And he told us after the year, and let me be clear before Bears fans get mad.
They're already mad.
He was not making excuses,
They're already mad.
but he was saying, I basically was not healthy all year. And I know everyone's banged up. Everyone's got to deal with injuries, but his ability to move in the pocket, to make off-platform throws, to contort his body in weird angles is part of what makes him special. And so that part of this is really important. I have said, and I told Matt Derry this, going into the year, I would project Jordan Love to have the best year of any of the 4 quarterbacks in the NFC North. But if you wanted to make the case, especially based on the last 2 or 3 seasons with Jared Goff, that Jared Goff deserves to be ahead of Jordan Love in the quarterback rankings, it's hard for me to argue with that, because if you look at the last few years, he's one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the league. Okay, he's got Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, all those guys, and Ben Johnson. I get it, but everyone needs help. Look at Patrick Mahomes. His numbers, Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, have vastly outstripped the production with Patrick Mahomes. And you can make the case that over the last 2 or 3 years, they've been the better quarterbacks. But look at the circumstances, the offensive line, the pass catchers, all those things. Every quarterback, even one of the greatest ever, arguably the greatest ever, needs that help. And so I think that for the Packers, they're banking on Jordan Love taking another step here, being healthy. And if you look at his stuff, Brian, the efficiency metrics, the advanced metrics over the last 2 seasons, he has been a top 10 quarterback in the NFL by production, by the numbers. That's what he's been. And what I've asked, and I've never asked you directly this, but I think with Brock Purdy, you can do some, because he's been the best by EPA and those numbers over the last 2 seasons. I think there's plenty of parsing you can do with those numbers, with Debo and Kittle and McCaffrey and Ayuk and all of the help that he has. Jordan Love doesn't have that in terms of the weapons that he has. I think Matt LaFleur and Kyle Shanahan are in the same tier-ish when it comes to designing offenses. And I think the offensive lines are close enough. I don't think you can make the same case for why those numbers with Jordan Love are elite that you can with some other quarterbacks where you're like, yeah, but is Jared Goff really doing that? Is Brock Purdy really doing all that? Or is a supporting cast amplifying a good quarterback? And let me say, Brian, Brock Purdy has outperformed, I've told you this, outperformed my expectations for him last year and is a better quarterback than I gave him credit for when we talked in the playoff game 2 years ago. He has outperformed that. I still think there's plenty of extenuating circumstances there to talk about why he's so good.
Well, look, it's a little unfair to compare anybody to Brock Purdy, who's so talented and handsome, looks good.
Joe Montana. I mean, come on.
And so we probably shouldn't go there if we're talking about quarterbacks. But yeah, no, I mean, Kyle Shanahan's an EPA. I hate the APA stats. That's what all the 49ers fans use. Jimmy Garoppolo was amazing EPA as well. It's that's a Shanahan thing.
Over his run, I think Mahomes and Breeze were the only quarterbacks that had higher EPAs. Or no, yeah, I think he was ahead of Aaron Rodgers in EPA in his time in San Francisco. So yeah, I mean, I think that's also a case against Brock Purdy, right? That
it's a case against a lot of quarterbacks. I just don't like the EPA. It's not a quarterback stat, and people put it.
It's a team stat.
Yeah,
but team productivity is downstream of quarterback play. So
it's related, but it's not a. It's it shouldn't be attached to quarterback.
Solely quarterbacks. I agree.
So I will say, Peter, I mean, fantasy aside, real world, just for 2025, I would take Love in the division to win now.
I would too.
I mean, Goff has a strong case.
Well, the Packers,
I think the supporting cast is such a big question with the Lions because Ben Johnson did such a great job of amplifying everything Jared Goff is good at and mitigating everything he's bad at. And so did this offensive line. Well, they lost Frank Ragnow. They lost Kevin Zeitler. And so that's a big deal. The pressure up the middle for Jared Goff is absolute stone cold death. And we have no idea if this new offensive coordinator, not Johnny Morton, not the receiver Johnny Morton, the former Josh McCown offensive coordinator Johnny Morton, we have no idea what he's going to be. We know what Matt LaFleur is as a coordinator. We know what the Packers offensive line is. And we know that the receivers are not special, but we know they're good enough. This was a top 5 offense last year by DVOA. It was a top 10 offense by EPA per play and success rate and all that good stuff. We know the running game is going to be really good. So I don't have any reason to believe Jordan Love is not going to continue to be a highly efficient quarterback. And I think he's going to be a top 6 to 8 quarterback in the NFL this year. And I think by the end of the year, That will be the consensus opinion on him. All right, more with Peacock and Williamson. Remember, this was from an episode of Peacock and Williamson about a week or so ago. We're having a good time. We've got more next on Locked On Packers. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is the next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average, in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. Plus, it's completely online. Rugiet connects you with a board-certified doctor and ships your treatment discreetly to your door. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL to get 15% off today. That's Rugiet.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please read the Rugiet website for full safety information.
I want to see it. I want to see a healthy Jordan Love this year, and I can't wait for the NFC North. I think they're all going to be well-coached teams. I love the hire of Ben Johnson. I think it was a home run for
Hate it.
They still have to stick that landing. But one thing you have to do is you can't say that, well, the Bears or the Lions aren't going to feel any effects from losing Ragnow and Johnson. They're going to be just fine. But then the Bears are going to be awesome because they got Ben Johnson. It's kind of like, which is it? Right. And that's where I'm at, is like, I'm really interested to see how both of these go. And I think things could still go okay for the Lions. But we read the stats here, Matt, on the Lions offense. I mean, not even talking about losing their offensive coordinator, which everyone is universally believes he's one of the best in the NFL. Without Frank Ragnow, their success rate and their yards per play goes from like second in the NFL to 27th or something like that. I mean, it's a big deal what they've lost on offense for the Lions this offseason.
And the defensive coordinator and some other assistant coaches. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Their window might have closed.
I wouldn't say it's closed, but
I don't think it's closed, but it could be closing.
It's not as open as it was, I think. And
right.
Fascinating here in the North. And I think the most consistent team, the team that was already good, already a playoff team, is now going to have a healthier quarterback and has gotten better.
I made the case, Brian, a couple weeks ago on our show that the best case for the Packers in the NFC, period, not just the NFC North, is continuity. Because Philadelphia, they lose a number of key contributors. They've got to replace an offensive coordinator that was vital to the elevation of Jalen Hurts last year, an offense that had major problems against pressure. We went through the Lions issues. The Vikings are going to take a step back, I believe. I know that they kept coordinator continuity, but QB continuity is like the most important thing in the NFL. And so we have no idea if he can play. And then there's these questions, I think, in the NFC South about how good any of those teams actually are. And the NFC West, all those teams have question marks. Did the Rams defense actually get any better? Are the 49ers going to be any healthier? And they moved on from some guys. They have some guys getting older. They've got some guys that are, getting paid. I think the case for Green Bay in the NFC, period, is, hey, it's a defensive coordinator that looked awesome last year, an offensive coach that we know has the bona fides, and a really good quarterback, and the youngest team in the league. You would expect them to take a step forward. 9 wins, 11 wins. Are they going to win 13 this year? Probably not. It's a tough schedule. But they are, to your point, being disrespected in the view of the league right now, because they're really, really good.
Let's talk about weapons for Jordan Love on offense. Added a first-round wide receiver, which has just been a thing. And I'm kind of disappointed because we don't get the whole Packers didn't draft a first-round wide receiver again thing anymore. We finally got themselves one. But to be honest with you, I thought their strategy of drafting the second, third, fifth round guys was working out pretty well. I like their group of guys and feel like there's almost too many. So, how is this lineup going to look? I think Jaden Reed in the slot is easy, but what's the rest going to be there for the Packers offense, and how is everybody going to line up now with the rookie added to the group? And B, which one of those wide receivers is going to get traded to Pittsburgh?
Well, the name that's been floated out there is Romeo Doubs on that last question. And he was someone that Aaron Rodgers really liked, at least early on in that 2022 season. By the end of the year, I don't know if he felt the same way, but time with Aaron can heal a lot of wounds. That's for sure. I was not surprised that they drafted a receiver in the first round. In fact, by the end of the pre-draft process, I was predicting that they were going to draft a receiver because they have a lot of good players. I was waiting to see if that lack of true alpha one was going to hurt them. And I think it did in the postseason. Now, if you have injuries, Christian Watson tears his ACL in the last week of the season. Jaden Reed gets hurt in the game. Romeo Doubs gets hurt in the game. And so suddenly you're throwing to Bo Melton, Malik Heath and Dontavian Wicks. I don't think anyone has those guys on their starting fantasy football teams in their fantasy playoffs.
I'm a Wicks truther. I love Dontavian Wicks.
Well, so Dontavian Wicks is the one guy, and I think he got like 17 targets in that game ultimately because he was the only guy that they had. But there were times last year against the best teams, 0-2 against Detroit, 0-2 against Minnesota, 0-2 against Philadelphia, where you go, they are talent-wise a guy short on offense, a playmaker short on offense. And so why not go for it in the first round? Matthew Golden would not have been the guy that I would have taken personally. But we've seen what this offense looks like when Christian Watson is not in it, when they don't have that vertical speed element, and it is tough. Any offense that lacks that speed, that ability to take the top off a defense, you saw this in San Francisco, Brian, like when you don't have that vertical element, it just becomes so difficult to get the spacing to work. And I think Matthew Golden is going to step right in as that vertical Z receiver, someone who can play the Christian Watson role, get everybody else open, and then also create these big plays. Christian Watson was their cheat code against man coverage, not because he's a polished route runner, but because he's freaking fast. Mm-hmm. And Matt LaFleur was really good at designing man beaters where you get Christian Watson against space. And a corner is going to lose that battle every single time because there just aren't that many guys who are going to be able to run with 6'4", 215, 4.35 speed. Now, I don't think Matthew Golden quite plays that fast, but I also think if you go back and watch Matthew Golden at Houston, when he had a quarterback who could actually throw the ball down the field, he looks faster. It's a weird phenomenon. Like he doesn't look as fast as Texas. And I truly think part of it is because Quinn Ewers has a noodle arm and just like how many times he had to come back to a deep ball or the ball is nowhere near it where it needs to be on a deep throw. I think like there are times you'd watch him run a post against Houston. He is exploding out of that break vertically to gain ground. Against Texas, he gets out of the break, but then is sort of like, okay, I'm going to have to wait for this ball because it's going to float. I got to be looking. It's just a different thing. So I think that's where he's going to fit into all of this. And it's not a draft pick. It is a 2023 draft pick that I think is going to ultimately be the anchor of this offense in the passing game, and that's Tucker Kraft. They are already talking about getting him the ball more. Jordan Love said on the record, one of our points of emphasis this offseason is getting him the ball more. And not in like, here's a check down, here's a dump off, in like the George Kittle kinds of ways that San Francisco does, where yes, those are in there. Those tight end screens are in there, but then let's create a play action shot play for Tucker Kraft. Let's create opportunities, manufactured touches for him, and call more plays specifically to get him the ball. Because last year, guys, he led all tight ends in yards after catch per reception. There was a point late in the season where he was averaging almost a first down after the catch per catch. It was like 9.8 yards yak per reception. Why would you not want to get that guy the ball when anytime you throw it to him, it turns into 10 yards, even if it's just chip release kinds of opportunities. So I think that's going to be a much bigger part of this offense. And if you add in that speed from Matthew Golden, now all of a sudden you can make the geometry fit here. You have Tucker Kraft and Jaden Reed to attack the middle of the field. You've got Matthew Golden to attack vertically. And then they added Savion Williams in the third round, who's a really intriguing player as your design touch. I hate to say it, Deebo Samuel type, because he's 96th percentile speed score kind of guy. He's a legit 6'3", 220 and can fly low 4.4s. Usually the Deebo Samuel comps are guys who are like kind of meh athletes, but run really hard after the catch and are built like running backs. Savion Williams is an elite athlete. And I think that could allow him, at least in the manufactured touch game, to be a little bit more effective than some of the guys we've seen come in and play that quote unquote Deebo Samuel role. Like I think you err chasing outliers a lot of times. This is something that I'm sure Matt, talks about with the scouting world. Like if you chase a lot of outliers, what did Bill Parcells say? You start chasing outliers, all of a sudden you got a team full of outliers. And that's not what you want. The Packers stayed true to their beliefs in big, strong, fast at receiver, but also found a guy who can do this thing. And I think that gives him a chance to succeed in this offense.
So, Peter, you mentioned that you're looking for an alpha receiver. And I said this pretty much all over the last 2 years, but certainly all during our 2024 coverage. I really like the Packers roster. I think they're smart team builders. I think they draft well. You mentioned the youth. I'm a Love fan. But I don't see an alpha on either side of the ball at any position. You know what I mean? Like, I thought maybe Rashawn Gary was going to be that guy. Who's Bosa, Watt, Parsons that puts teams away? Who's that receiver or superstar or the Lane Johnson, or you know what I mean? Like, there are Pro Bowlers. It's a good roster, but who's a great player on this team?
This is a great question. And we actually did an episode last week about, as I was putting my top 100 list together, I was going, this is not great. That I'm this far down on the list.
Right.
And looking at some of these Packers players. Now, like, ultimately, Rashawn Gary, Zach Tom, those guys made my top 100. And so did Jordan Love, but that's it, right? And so
maybe Edrin Cooper could be that.
Yeah,
or
and
McKinney, or
I don't somehow Edrin Cooper. I got to talk to Ali Bronson about this. Somehow Edrin Cooper did not make the list that you could vote on, even though I'm pretty sure I put him on
a little early,
the list,
but,
because I think I would have put him on because I think he has the chance to be like really, really special. But you're right. And this is something we've been talking about over the last 6 months, Matt. This, I think you can make the case, is the most hole-free roster in the NFL. But
I meant to say that as part of the question.
But if you told me it's not a top 5 roster in terms of talent, I would say probably right. Like, that's the weird thing. It's hard to even think of a comparison, right? Like, this is just not how teams are normally built. Normally, when you have flaws in your team building, it's because you have flaws in your team building, right? So you have this high-end group of guys, and then you're going to have some holes here and there. Your right guard is not going to be up to par, or your nickel corner is a below average player, or you've got a second linebacker who just can't do it. But they don't have any of those guys. They don't have any of the, like, you're playing Kyle Shanahan this week and Robert Saleh, they're going to pick on your weak points. No, they don't have someone like that. But when they go against the 49ers, a fully healthy 49ers, they don't have anyone as good as Nick Bosa or Fred Warner or Brandon Ayuk or George Kittle or Christian McCaffrey
or Trent
when
Williams,
he's healthy.
Right.
So it's like, you have to win with coaching then, and you have to win with being the more sound team. And in 2023, to start the year, drops, missed assignments, penalties, that was a huge problem. But by the end of the year, you saw the vision of like, oh, wow. Well, when they don't make mistakes, just being a really good roster and not being a great one is actually very, very good. It's very, very useful. And they were one stop away from beating the 49ers in their building. Now, the flip side of that, right, is if they'd had an alpha, if Rashawn Gary was Nick Bosa, would Rashawn Gary have closed the door on Brock Purdy on that last drive? Or if Darnell Savage were Xavier McKinney, does he catch the interception that Brock Purdy throws into his chest in the first quarter? And by the way, we should have mentioned Xavier McKinney, an all-pro last year, an outstanding player.
Yeah,
who has been made even better by Jeff Hafley in the scheme. So I think they're hoping that they can get some internal development and some of these guys can get there. I think Josh Jacobs was an elite player last year. Xavier McKinney was an elite player last year. But like, how much is a running back?
True, do you want a running back and safety to be your best two guys?
Exactly right.
Right. Yeah.
So this is the problem that you run into. You'd really like your difference makers to be your pass rushers, your receivers, and your quarterback. Now, we've still got more with Peacock and Williamson next here on a crossover Locked On Packers. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with family or friends, or both? Maybe it's a game day and you suddenly realize, hey, you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Gametime makes it possible. They are the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, making it easy to browse the app for exciting upcoming Major League Baseball games. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed. Tell me what you guys think of this. I think the Bills roster and the Ravens roster is built very similarly.
I think the Bills are very similar, except they've dropped
Bills
out.
especially.
Yeah.
It's like, who is the second best player on the Buffalo Bills?
I actually think it's worse than the Packers.
Is it James Cook? Is it Greg Rousseau? Like, I don't know. But do they have a lot of bad players? Maybe they're without Rasul Douglas, their cornerback 2 spot is probably not great. But they have Josh Allen.
Yep.
So you need Jordan Love to be in an easy division. You need Jordan Love to be a tick better for this to work. Mm-hmm. And I do think it can be. Like, I think you're right. I think they have a better roster than the Bills, but their quarterback is not as good as Josh Allen. Right. So how much better does Jordan Love have to be to close that delta with, say, the Eagles, with, say, the Lions, with, say, the best version of the 49ers or the Rams, if that offense comes together in the nuclear way that we think it could?
One more tier could do it.
I think so. I think you're right. If he's like the 6th best quarterback this year, they can win the Super Bowl. Like, I agree. I think that's in the cards, especially in the NFC, where, the Eagles have taken a step back and the Lions have taken a step back. I think they've come back to Green Bay. We saw Jordan Love in the second half of 2023 be the best quarterback in the NFL by productivity standards. Like, I'd take him over Hurts, who just won the Super Bowl. Exactly right. I think I would take Jordan Love over Jalen Hurts, but the Eagles roster last year was better. So no doubt. What's the difference? Now, all that being said, and all the injuries, Elton Jenkins goes out, Devontae Wyatt goes out in that playoff game. That's a 1-score game in the fourth quarter. And so, like, the Packers defense kept them in it. No Jair Alexander. That defense blanketed A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and kept Saquon Barkley in check until the end when Eagles fans always quick to point out Saquon took a knee. Okay, the game was over by then. Okay, like, relax. But the Packers gave the Eagles everything they could handle in that game without 5 of their best players. I think that tells you where they can go when their guys get healthy, but it's even more incumbent on them to be healthy because they don't have Nick Bosa. They don't have Puka Nacua or an Aaron Donald who can take over a game and make up that gap of the other players who are missing when you go to a backup. Now, the good news is the backup is not as, like, that gap difference is not as big. So, like, if Zach Tom gets hurt and they got to play Anthony Belton, their 2nd-round pick, well, they got a guy, right? Most teams don't. I always say this about the Packers, and I try and explain this to fans. The Packers have 7 guys that they feel comfortable starting on their offensive line. How many teams have 5?
I wanted to bring that up too. Yeah.
Right. So I think that's a part and parcel of this roster building. And that's a weapon. Like, we talk about Aaron Rodgers not having 1st-round picks. They've spent multiple 1st-round picks in the Aaron Rodgers era on offensive linemen. He always had good offensive lines. Jordan Love has always had good offensive lines. That is a huge, huge thing. And I think it could sink the Lions this year. Like, if their interior offensive line replacements are not as good as they think, that could scuttle a potential Super Bowl season. I don't think the Packers are going to have that problem.
We always geek out on team building here on Peacock and Williamson. So this is a fascinating conversation. And I love the idea of, depth versus star power. And the 49ers roster is getting less deep and more old and reliant on the stars. And you see last year what happens if you have a lot of injuries. And then you see the Packers, who are, and I think you nailed it, Matt. You're talking about, okay, well, you don't really want your safety and your running backs to be your best players. And I hear people say all the time about the 49ers. They're like, oh, Christian McCaffrey needs to stay healthy. Well, then you're sunk if you're incumbent on a running back being healthy, right? You never build the team around that. It's nice to have a good running back. And obviously it was great for Philadelphia. He didn't even lead the team in rushing in the Super Bowl win though. Right. And so, I mean, don't get me started on that.
But how many running backs could you have put on that Philly roster and had them win the Super Bowl? Like, there's probably 8 guys,
he had over 1,000 yards before contact last year.
Right.
He's behind the best offensive line in the league. Like, that's a pretty big part of it. And you put a great player behind that, he's a great player, then it looks awesome, obviously. And so I think there's a lot of similarities with 2023 McCaffrey, 2024 Saquon Barkley in that regard. But the whole thing isn't built out of the running back, and that's where people kind of get it twisted. But I actually love the way that Goody has built that team. I love the idea of drafting 2 guys at the same position in the same draft. They did it again at wide receiver. They did it at tight end. And guess what? The second tight end is better than the first tight end, right? Yeah. And a couple of offensive linemen, I believe, in this draft as well. And it's a very deep football team. And they've taken shots at star positions and star players. And Gary's kind of looked like he was going to get there and then kind of not. And then, Lucas Van Ness hasn't really been a star player or anything like that. But they're swinging it with edge guys in the first round. They're trying to get there. They drafted a 1st-round quarterback, even though they had Aaron Rodgers. And so they're trying to hit home runs there. And, sometimes there's some luck involved, but I like the way they've built their football team. They just need a little hit there. And, watching the 49ers, watching the Packers, watching these teams in the playoffs. And it's like, who knocked the 49ers out? Well, it was Chris Jones making a big play in the Super Bowl, and then Patrick Mahomes finishing the deal. The Niners,
and Travis Kelce.
Yeah, and Travis Kelce. And then the quarterback gets knocked out by an elite edge rusher in the NFC Championship game in another year, and that ruins their season. So it's so important to be deep, but you need those closers, the finishers, the star power at key positions as well. So some positions.
I think it hurt the Lions not having Aiden Hutchinson, of course. I mean, I think that was a big reason why they left, and they're dealing with this too, right? They have stars, but their depth is not the same. It's not the same as it was, and we'll see what it looks like moving forward. So it is a fascinating difference, and they take, again, to your point, they take swings in the first round. Eric Stokes was a bet on athletic upside. Lucas Van Ness, Rashawn Gary, their bets on athletic upside. And the good thing about that is having the ceiling means you're at least giving yourself the chance that you get that elite player. They just don't pick in the top 10 ever.
That's what I say, Peter. Like, I talk about that here all the time in Pittsburgh. It's like, yeah, you got JJ Watt or TJ Watt, but he was at the end of the first round. Like, Bosa goes in the top 5. Hutchinson goes in the top 5. Like the Packers and Steelers never pick in the top 5.
You just don't have the chance to get those guys. So you have to kind of get lucky. Now, TJ Watt was someone, look, don't let Packer fans hear you mention TJ Watt ever.
Bet they would have liked him, yeah.
Because the Packers traded out of that spot ahead of the Steelers to take TJ or to take, and then they took Kevin King, who turned out to be a pretty big bust of a player. So yeah, TJ Watt is a sore subject around Packerland.
Oh yeah, those fast, tall corners late in round 1, early round 2 haven't really worked out for the Packers. So. No,
Brian Gutekunst loves those guys. Now it worked. What's interesting is it worked with Carrington Valentine. He looks like he could be a rotation corner for them.
That was actually my last question for you, Peter. Sorry for interrupting, but you mentioned a team that doesn't have holes. Corner's my concern.
Yeah. I get it. But here's what I'll say. They were top 10 in defense, passing defense last year. And the reason they is the safeties. Xavier McKinney, Evan Williams, Javon Bullard. Teams just did not throw the ball, especially deep. And the fastest way to get beat is to give up big passing plays. Like that's just the easiest way to get beat. And so it's why teams chase explosive plays. But after the first month and a half, teams just were like, we're not testing Xavier McKinney, because he is just so good at baiting you into those throws, at ranging across, at identifying. And then Evan Williams, this is very similar. I compared this the other day to, do you remember that great Fangio Bears defense, that one year where they were just incredible? And they had Eddie Jackson and Adrian Amos. It reminds me a lot of that, where Eddie Jackson was a risk taker, playmaker, interceptor, fumble creator, and then Adrian Amos just did all the dirty work. He made it so the defense still worked, even if Eddie Jackson freelanced a little bit. It reminds me of that. Xavier McKinney is everywhere and anywhere, and you just know Evan Williams is going to be there. You add in Javon Bullard going into year 2, where he's just going to play the nickel. He started as a safety. Keyshawn Nixon, I thought, acquitted himself way better than I thought he would at outside corner last year. But then they bring in Nate Hobbs, who was always a kind of a favorite of mine in Las Vegas. I liked him coming out. And they think the world of him. They think he can play boundary. They think he can play in the nickel. Their ability to mitigate a lack of elite talent at corner with elite talent at safety is kind of the model, right, that the 49er Fangio defenses used back in the day, when it's like, can you name the corners on those 2011 49ers teams? Well, maybe Brian can, but like, you remember Deshaun Golson, you remember Dante Whitner, you remember Patrick Willis, and you remember the Smith brothers. That was how that team was built. It kind of didn't matter who was playing corner for them. And I think that's kind of the defense the Packers are hoping that they can build. Plus Jeff Hafley, when they went to more cover 2 last year, they played more, to cap those corners so that those flaws were not exposed. They used more designer blitzes, and they were able to ham and egg it. I mean, look, if corners are not going to kill you against the Eagles, against AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, who are they going to beat you against? Like, there was not a game last year where you can point to and go, they lost because their secondary wasn't good enough. There really just isn't a game where that's the case. And I'm talking, they played Justin Jefferson twice. They played, the Lions twice.
Lions, right.
You can't point to a game and go, the secondary lost them that game. It just didn't happen. So like, that's kind of a miracle, but it's also, I think, point that proves that coverage is a weak link position. It doesn't matter how good your best players are. It's how good, or how bad, in this case, your worst players are. And they just don't have any bad players.
And they can withstand the loss of Jair Alexander, probably. You know,
he doesn't play football,
He
guys.
play
This is the problem with Jair Alexander is he plays 7 or 8 games a year. Like he just isn't. Having him would be great. Having 16 games of Ja would be incredible. It would have made this team a lot better. But not having him is just like, it's kind of not that big a deal. He doesn't play. All right, it was great to jump on with Peacock and Williamson. Check them out. They do a great job covering the entire league. So if you want to get, the broad strokes of what's happening around the NFL, that is a great show to be checking out. All right, back on Monday, and we've got again a modified schedule next week: Monday, Wednesday, Friday. With the holiday next week, trying to give you guys a little bit of a break. I don't want anyone doing homework while it's summer. Not everyone's on vacation, but it's summertime. The kids are on vacation. If you got school age kids, they are on vacation. So I'm trying to give you some time, and I'm trying to take some time. That's what we try and do around here. All right, follow me on all the social medias, Peter_Bukowski on X and on Instagram. Follow the podcast wherever you find social media. Follow the podcast wherever you get podcasts. Subscribe to us there. Leave a rating, leave a review, and of course, you can always watch us on our YouTube page so you can stay locked on Packers.